We're almost ready. Now we're ready. Good morning, everyone. We're ready to call the board meeting to order. And Mr. Keddy, if you would please call the roll.
Chair Lieber.
Here.
Vice Chair Gaines.
Here.
Member Vasquez.
Present.
Member Schaefer.
Present.
Deputy Controller Emron.
Present.
Thank you, members. We have quorum present, and the board meeting is called to order. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Member Schaefer. Please rise.
Place your hand over your heart and follow me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair, once we did that at City Council, and the guy that gave the Pledge of Allegiance said, put your right hand over your left heart.
That's brilliant. I love that. Well, members, we're going to go to our brief opening remarks. Does anyone have remarks that they'd like to make? Mr. Vasquez.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few items I wanted just to, in observance that are happening this month. First, I'd like to recognize Juneteenth, which was celebrated last week in the U.S. Juneteenth to observed annually on June 19th and is so often celebrated on the third Saturday in June to commemorate the ending of slavery in the United States. There were many ways to celebrate Juneteenth in L.A. County, in my district, including community ceremonies, celebrations, concerts, film presentations, music exhibits, excuse me, and much more. In 2021, Juneteenth became the first new federal holiday since Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is adopted with President Joe Biden, signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law. All U.S. states and the District of Columbia have formally recognized this holiday in some way. Now I'd like to move into the Post-Trauma Stress Disorder Awareness Month, which is observed in June. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health problem that some people develop after experiencing or witnessing a life-threatening event. According to PTSD Foundation of America, an estimated 7.8% of Americans will experience PTSD at some point in their lives, while about 30% of service members who have spent time in the war zones experience PTSD. Typically, only 50% of PTSD sufferers seek treatment. Help is available for veterans and others who may be experiencing PTSD. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs hosts national centers and PTSD websites at ptsd.va.gov, which includes an array of information in the following categories: understanding PTSD, treatment options, get well now, and for family and friends in addition. The National Mental Health Hotline is at 1-866-903-3787. We'll connect those who may be experiencing PTSD symptoms with the trained mental health professionals. The 3-digit National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Crisis Lifeline is 988. We'll connect those in distress or crisis or at risk of suicide to a caring crisis counselor. Veterans can call 988, then press 1 to speak with a responder qualified to support veterans. And next, I'd like to also recognize the Caribbean American Heritage Month, which is celebrated annually in June to celebrate the many achievements and contributions of Americans who trace their ancestry to Caribbean nations, including, but not limited to, Cuba, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Haiti, Guyana, and Trinidad, and the U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Among the many notable Caribbean Americans are Associate Justice Sonia Sotomayor of the Supreme Court of the United States and Lester Holt American journalist and news anchor for the NBC Nightly News weekday and kids edition on Dateline NBC. And lastly, just wanted to also bring up the LGBTQ Pride Month, which is celebrated each year in June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan, commemorating years of struggle for civil rights and the ongoing pursuit of equal justice under the law for the LGBTQ community, and celebrate the contributions and achievement of LGBTQ individuals. Just two of the many noteworthy LGBTQ Americans are Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, and Tammy Baldwin, U.S. Senator of Wisconsin. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair. Sorry for that long, lengthy one. But
No, thank you. Those were important notations to make, so thank you very much for those. Mr. Emron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all my colleagues here on the dais, to members of the Board of Equalization, and those viewing online. June is an important month for me and the Controller both. It's National Gun Violence Awareness Month, and so we honored the community shattered by gun violence and raised awareness to a growing issue. People all across this country wear orange, like myself today, the color hunters wear in the woods to protect themselves and others, and to commemorate the life of 15-year-old Hadia Pendleton, who was shot and killed on the playground in 2013, just 1 week after she performed with her high school marching band at President Barack Obama's second inauguration. Hadia's story is one piece of a much larger public health epidemic that claims the lives of more than 44,000 Americans each year. And just in Oakland, California, the city that I was born, there was a mass shooting during a celebration of Juneteenth that injured 15 people. So it's definitely an issue that's continuing to be very, very pressing. So no one should ever have to lose a loved one simply because they went to school or the grocery store or the movie theater, or in Hadia's case, on the playground with friends. So no other country experiences gun violence at the rate we do here. And as the problem persists and no action is taken, we send a signal to the rest of the world that we are fine with the status quo. While no law or sets of laws will end gun violence, we have a deep obligation to try, all of us together, to try and stop the next tragedy. Even if we can save one life, one child's life, we need to act, and now is the time to do the right thing for our children, our community, and the state that we love the most. And I just want to speak on a personal note here. When I was growing up, I had a very, very good friend of mine. He was my basketball team and my high school teammate, and we knew each other our whole lives, and we ended up going to college together, and we spoke about the dreams of becoming a lawyer, becoming a pharmacist. And when we went home that summer, we were working out in the gym together, playing basketball, catching up. And I didn't know that was the last time I was going to see him, because 2 days later he was shot and killed in the streets of Antioch, California. And we speak about this issue and this idea that, hey, you know what, you grow up in urban America, that this is just the status quo, that it's okay, it's going to happen, that your life is going to be cut short at 18, 20, 21 years old. But I'm going to refuse that. I'm going to fight back against that notion, because no person, no child, no young adult deserves to have their life taken by the bullet of a gun, by the barrel of a gun. And I think it's an issue that we all need to work together to solve, because it affects each and every one of us, whether we know it or not. So I just want to pay my tribute to him. I miss you a lot, and I hope you're resting well in heaven. And then on a more happier note here, I want to introduce two interns we have joining the family, SEO family today, Azriel Jones and Samira Sharif. If you can stand to be recognized, please. So they'll be joining the SCO team. I just want to read a really quick bio. Azriel Jones, she's a Bay Area native. She's currently pursuing a criminal justice degree at Sacramento State University. She's a proud member of the Sigma Gamma Rho sorority, and she's dedicated to celebrating diversity, prioritizing equity, and fostering inclusion. And then to the left here is Samira Sharif. She's a 20-year-old political science major that will be transferring to UC Davis this fall and plans to attend law school. They both plan to attend law school after obtaining their bachelor's degree. She was also born and raised in the Bay Area in Hayward, California. And in her words, I always try to help in any way I can, big or small, and I hope this internship will open the doors for me to make a positive difference in people's lives. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope this summer is going to be as fruitful as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield back.
Thank you. And congratulations to the interns, and we so much appreciate your service. And I see that you're seated with Ms. Wendy Scott, who is a real pro at what goes on here and what goes on in state government. So you're learning from the best. So thank you for being here today. Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to welcome the interns, and I would like all of us to consider having interns work with us, because that's an excellent opportunity for them to learn what we're doing and then go on to greater service as they mature and become part of the middle-aged life of America. We will be the most talented. I have some happy news. I always like to mention a birthday, and I always like it to have some relation to my district, which is Southern California, south of L.A. There's a man named James Meredith who turns 91 years of age today. James Meredith is the first black ever admitted to the University of Mississippi. It took the Supreme Court of the United States to order that he be admitted. Governor Ross Barnett wanted no part of it. John F. Kennedy personally and Robert F. Kennedy, who was Attorney General, had, would you believe, 200 federal troops, marshals, or whatever they were, went into Jackson, Mississippi to assure that he got into class, to assure that he wouldn't be hurt. America could not afford to have him shot or injured. He got into University of Mississippi and graduated and went on to serve with the U.S. Senate office. I got to know him. He came to San Diego because he had a son that was at the University of San Diego here, and I read about in the paper he was here to visit his son who had some health issues. And I'm a former city councilman in San Diego, and I took him out to lunch a couple of times, and we became friends. I call him every year to wish him happy birthday. I even tried to get the University of San Diego to give him an honorary degree because his son having gone there and he having spent some time on campus. Governor Ross Barnett attracted the attention of a young Jerry Brown when he was at Yale University, and Jerry and a couple of his Yale classmates went down to Mississippi to convince Governor Barnett he ought to have a little more Christian charity in how he operates the university. And Governor Barnett took immediate action. He called Governor Pat Brown, Jerry's dad, out in California and said, "I don't want your kid telling me how to run my business down here in Mississippi." And Governor Brown told him, "Thank you for advising me of what happened." But knowing the relationship between father and son, I'm sure that Pat Brown said to Jerry, "Attaboy." So that's my story for today. We're celebrating the 95th birthday of my friend James Meredith, and may he have many more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for their comments, excellent comments this morning. I just wanted to highlight the U.S. Olympic trials. I know we all have athletes in our districts that are competing, and it's just a ray of hope, I think, for America when we see the youth of our country so diverse, competing to represent our country in the Olympic Games. And so I've just been spending the last few nights watching swimming and U.S. Track and field, and it's just been heartening to watch that and very encouraging for our country. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone, for your comments, and very varied and interesting and a real portrait of California, so thank you. Now, we'll go on, and Mr. Cuddy, if you would please call our first order of business, the informational announcement.
Thank you. Good morning. This meeting is live streamed to the public and posted on the BoE YouTube channel. Therefore, we ask that all speakers please state your name first before you begin speaking for the record. We ask that you speak clearly and slowly into the microphone. I would like to remind the audience to silence their cell phones and any other wireless devices. Please note that public comment is taken at each agenda item. The public will be invited to comment on matters before the board. If there are any members of the public wishing to speak before the board on any agenda item in person, we ask that they complete and submit to the Sergeant of Arms a public comment appearance sheet located at the entrance of the auditorium. If you wish to speak before the board by telephone, please dial the phone number and access code provided on a public agenda notice and follow the instructions of the AT&T moderator. If you intend to make a public comment today using the AT&T moderator, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line before the beginning of the agenda item you wish to comment on. We recommend this as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay between the live stream and the live event. When giving public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. This concludes the informational announcement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And going on to item 1, which is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Persons who wish to address the Board of Equalization regarding items that are not on the agenda may do so under this item. Please note that the board cannot act on items that are not on the agenda. However, the board can schedule issues raised by the public for consideration at future meetings. When giving your public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And I believe that we do not have any written comments, nor individuals in the auditorium today who would like to comment. So we'll go to our AT&T moderator for the first time of the day. AT&T moderator, is there anyone holding on the line who would like to make comments on item 1, issues that are not on the agenda?
If you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please pick up the handset before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there is no one queuing up at this time.
Thank you. So we'll go on to item 2, our consent agenda, which is the minutes of the May 29th, 2024 board meeting. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment? Or if not, we can take a motion on this.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Vasquez,
Second.
and seconded by Mr. Schaefer. And we do not have written comments, nor anyone in the auditorium who wishes to speak to it. So we'll go back to the AT&T moderator. Moderator, is there anyone who'd like to make a comment on item 2?
I have a question. Does the public really have any grounds, or is there any issue that we would invite comment on it? I think this is just a mechanical thing saying we okay the minutes. So there's
Well, we'll get that answered in just a minute by
thank you.
our counsel, but we've already got the AT&T moderator launched here. And so we'll let him ask if there's anybody out there. Moderator, is there anyone who's making, interested in making comments?
If you would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there is no one queuing up for comment.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll bring it back, and I see Ms. Himovitz has approached, so we'll give her a chance to.
Sure. Good morning. Julia Himovitz on behalf of the legal department. So your question was, does the public have a right to comment on the minutes? Because this is an action item, we welcome people to make any comment that they wish on this item, just as a matter of practice, transparency, and for bag leaking purposes.
Has anyone ever made a comment?
I can't speak to that. If you wish, you could go back and watch all of our meetings. I can't speak to whether anybody has ever in the history of the
Could you
BoE.
suggest a hypothetical comment somebody might make? I can't.
Somebody might disagree with the way an action item or a motion or something is stated within your minutes, and they may have an issue with that.
Like it might have been recorded improperly in their opinion.
Sure, I don't want to give people ideas in which they could call in, but certainly somebody could call and comment on your minutes if
All
they
right,
so
thank
choose.
you very much.
Sure.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Mr. Vasquez, seconded by Mr. Schaefer, for approval of the minutes. If there's no further discussion, we can go to Ms. Cicchetti to call the roll, please.
Chair Lieber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gaines,
Aye.
Member Vasquez,
Aye.
Member Schaefer,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Emron.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. And we'll go on now. As you may notice, we removed item 3 from the agenda today. That was to be an update from the Franchise Tax Board, but because we have a quorum of the Franchise Tax Board represented on our board, we felt that in an abundance of caution, we would not present on that today. So our next item up is item 4. This is the property tax legislation, an update on AB 1879 and 1868. I see Mr. Angelo approaching.
Good morning, Chair Lieber and members. Ted Angelo with the Legislative and Research and Statistics Division. This agenda, these 2 items on the agenda are usually part of my legislative update, and they were put on the agenda for information. They are not action items from my recollection, but I'm just going to give a brief update on these 2 proposals. The first, AB 1879 by Assemblymember Gibson regarding electronic signatures, I discussed at last month's board meeting. This bill is scheduled for Senate Rev and Tax on June 26th, so coming up this week, and there's a lot of activity this week that I'll cover later in my legislative overview as we come up on deadlines before they go on summer recess. But AB 1879 is sponsored by the California Assessors Association, and it further extends the authorization of electronic signatures in property tax transactions. The May 23rd amendments require a county assessor to accept an electronic signature from a taxpayer if the assessor authorizes the submission of a BoE form electronically. An additional amendment on June 13th allows an assessor to charge a reasonable fee for costs associated with accepting an e-signature. So there are certain formatted protections in place for e-signatures, and there can be costs associated with that. So that would be able to offset for some of the rural counties and smaller counties any costs associated with that if a consumer taxpayer wants to submit it that way. It's a permissive statute proposal, so they don't have to accept that, but if they do accept BoE forms electronically, they would have to accept e-signatures. And again, the electronic signature would need to be authenticated in a manner that's approved by the BoE, which is the current statute authorizes that, and this would kind of further enhance that. So if there's any questions on that particular measure, I can move to the next one. If not,
I had a question.
Mr. Gaines and then Mr. Schaefer.
Yes,
Pause for a minute, please. Mr.
okay.
Gaines was the
Thank you.
fastest finger. Sorry.
Quick draw. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify on the fee issue. You mentioned that it was to offset costs, so I would imagine that these counties are having to upgrade their technology in order to provide electronic signatures, and as a result, a fee being charged that would justify. I guess what I want to clarify is that that there's a direct correlation between the fee and the improvement to the office.
I can't speak to that because I don't have information about what technological impediments they might have. I just know there are costs associated with e-signature verification process, and there's certain licenses that allow for them. And we have to, at BoE, approve and authorize them.
Sure.
Mr. Young has information about the historical context
Yes.
involved, but I have not had direct contact with the California Assessors Association telling me exactly which counties may not have the technological capability or to deal with the costs involved.
Okay. Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes. Good morning, honorable board members. David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So if I could, I'd just like to fill you in a little bit on the details of that. So right now, the way things are set up is that there is a whole range of services that counties will offer. Some counties have fully adopted what they call the digital signature, and it's usually by a vendor that does this, such as DocuSign.
Okay.
They already pay a fee in order to accept those signatures, and so that's already built into their cost structures. Some counties now already charge a fee for an electronic signature. An electronic signature is already permitted under current law. But it's only permitted for one form, and that's the 571L, the board form. That is the business property statement. So if the assessors elect, they can ask the board to approve their method of accepting that form. It does not have to meet the requirements under the digital signature. So what this bill wants to do is expand that authority, that e-signature, to cover other forms that the board prescribes. So even with that type of acceptance of that e-signature, there still may be costs associated with basically setting up the system, maintaining the system, and basically processing it once they receive it. So it's just a permissive provision to allow them, if there are costs, they're allowed to pass on reasonable costs to the filer of that form.
That's great. I just wanted to make sure that there was a nexus.
Yeah.
There's a Supreme Court decision, Sheets versus El Dorado County, which
Right.
is in my district, that the plaintiff won.
Yes.
In the U.S. Supreme Court,
Right.
and they're saying there has to be a nexus between
Correct.
the fee charged and the services provided.
Correct.
Which is it's gonna be interesting to see what happens, nationally. But
Yeah.
since I live in California, right here in California, with regards to that. So I'm just asking the question. I love the bill. I think
Right.
the bill makes a lot of sense. I just want to
Yeah.
clarify that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the case, and it should be interesting in the implementation of it. But
Yes.
you are correct. It
Wonderful.
will open up some options.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, thank you. I think this is a step in the right direction. I want us to feel, though, that we don't have to recover all of our cost if we just require some of the cost in determining what we're going to charge the taxpayer or the customer. There are a lot of things in government where we make copies for 5 or 10 cents of a public document. It may cost us really more than that to make it, given the expensive cost of ink and everything, but we just set it at 5 or 10 cents because that facilitates public access without making it unduly expensive. So I'm in favor of recovering some of our costs instead of every penny of it. And then I also would like to give more discretion to the assessors as to when they want to use electronic signatures. You say here they must be on forms approved by the state board. What if one of our assessors has dreamed up a form that's working very well, let's say Jeff Prang in Los Angeles, but it has not yet been approved by us? I don't know that we really need to be approving everything that assessor wants to use. I like to think that the assessors know really more than we do about what they're doing, and I would give them a little discretion in forms that they want to work with without feeling everything has to come across my desk. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other further discussion about AB 1879, then we'll go to 1868, Ms. Friedman's bill.
Sure. So on AB 1868, this is the otherwise known as the Habitat for Humanity model proposal. It was passed the Senate Rev and Tax Committee on June 16th, and it was up in Senate Appropriations yesterday and was referred to the suspense file. It doesn't have a very significant price tag, But a lot of bills that, because of the budget situation we're in right now are being referred to suspense even at lower thresholds. So this bill is intended to codify best practices and provide more clarity and consistency for the valuation process for properties under the habitat model. Properties that satisfy specific welfare exemption provisions of Revenue Tax Section 402.1 shall rebuttably be presumed to include only the restricted value, which would exclude the deed of trust, contractual covenants, and enforceable restrictions in most circumstances. So these are the particular contractual affordability requirements for enforceable restrictions, often referred to in the habitat model and somewhat unique to them. It's a clarification. There was prior legislation that required assessors to look at these factors, and this one puts a rebuttable presumption in place.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, Mr. Vasquez?
Just a quick question. Thank you for your presentation on that, but I'm just wanted to be clear. I know Habitat for Humanity, is affiliated with the sale of about 100 homes annually across the state. The contracts they use to restrict the homes apparently vary among the counties, and even county practices vary. I'm very sympathetic and would like to see this bill move forward, but it seems like the staff and the assessors had some concerns with the rebuttable presumption that you just mentioned, and I'm just wondering, because it sounds like this one size doesn't fit all. So moving forward, I guess, and I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Young or Mr. Antion, could you please explain what would happen with this?
I'll just speak to the political side of it first before Mr. Young gets into the technicalities. But
yes.
I had not heard of any opposition from any assessor or assessor's group with the latest version of the bill. So if that's the case and there are concerns, I'll take a look and see if there's some kind of late concerns being relayed to the committees, but I haven't heard of them. And the bill was moving with no opposition in terms of votes and stated in committee opposition. So.
Well, it's good to hear, because I think it was early on I was hearing this, so maybe they resolved those issues.
I believe they did, but I can't go on record saying they are absolutely resolved. I just haven't heard of them.
Appreciate it. And then the other question I had is just, so in saying in the current law, establishing property value requires that every contract that restricts property must be analyzed and to see if the actual does restrict the value. Is that true moving forward then? Or is that something for Mr. Young?
If I may weigh in.
Yes.
Sir. So every contract actually does affect the value of the home, but the assessors they're governed by a different set of law that requires that you only consider certain types of contracts. Usually it's contracts that are recognized as having the force of government behind it. So if you and I set up a contract that somehow restricts the value of your home, the assessors may not need to recognize that. Let's say I sell you my house, and in the sales contract I restrict what you can do there on Sundays. You can't watch football. That may actually have a real effect on what the property's worth, but the assessor does not need to recognize that. But certain contracts that have the force of government behind it, you do have to recognize. What the 402.1 did with the habitat and to a large extent the CLTs, the community land trust folks, is that they said this type of contract you have to recognize the restrictions on the property, and they're the low income restrictions. So your prior comment, you are correct. Habitat has over the years, their model of homes and how they restrict it has evolved, and some of them are different from other locales. Each habitat has their own region and their own areas, and their contracts may vary a little bit. But what this legislation is trying to do is they're trying to add a little bit of uniformity to it. So when you have something that sells and it comes with this restriction on there, and that restriction comes with basically a trust deed, a second on it that says, hey, look, this home has to be either owner occupied, you can't rent it out, you have to sell it to somebody else who's similarly qualified if you want to sell it. That contract needs to be looked at, and sometimes that contract comes with a trust deed that may be actually have money attached to it. You can get a home that says if you breach these contracts, you're going to owe us whatever the trust deed is, $100,000, $50,000, whatever it is. What this legislation is trying to do is to say, hey, look, if this is that type of contract and it's for $100,000 or $50,000, that it's only for the enforcement of low-income restrictions, then you don't add that into the sales price. So if you bought the home for $50,000 down, the first deed of $200,000, and there's this other contract, this other deed out there for another $50,000, you don't get to add that in. The presumption is that is only for enforcement, and you don't consider it until you can rebut that presumption that should be added in. It just tilts it into the favor of the taxpayer. So it's trying to add a little bit of uniformity and guidance to how these homes are valued for property tax purposes.
No, it makes sense, because I know Habitat for Humanity does, they have like this sweat equity kind of.
They do.
Yeah. Contract they put together. 'Cause
yeah.
I remember volunteering on a couple of their projects years ago.
Exactly.
Which is good, because it allows folks to get into homes.
Right.
But you're right. If they try to flip it,
yeah,
it has these restrictions.
It has these restrictions, yeah.
Well, that's good.
And the way to enforce it is with that type of silent second.
So this sounds like it's trying to just tighten it up.
It's
somewhat.
It's tightening up, and it's adding a little bit more guidance. It's not an absolute. It is a rebuttable presumption, but it gives more guidance as to how to value these things for property tax purposes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
I just had one comment for Mr.
Yes,
Gaines,
please.
if I could, Vice Chair Gaines.
Please.
Back to 1879 on the e-signature bill, when you mentioned the Supreme Court was looking at this, it's funny because I remember there was a Sinclair decision which tried to clarify the difference between a fee and a tax. And then something happened with, I remember speaking to the Revenue tax consultant about propositions that cleared this up over maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And now they're back at it again. So they're always trying to make sure that, a reasonable service is involved when a fee is charged to that fee versus just being a flat tax.
Yeah,
and it's been an ongoing thing for like 20 years, and I just had to.
That Sheets decision had to do with I think it was an older couple that had bought a parcel of land. They wanted to put a mobile home on it.
Right.
And they did that. But the fee was, the landowner and the thought that was way out of whack with the amount of use of it was a transportation fee.
Right.
And he just thought that it wasn't properly calculated based on his mobile home on that property, and that's why. So he paid it in protest, and then it challenged it legally.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Angelo and Mr. Young. And as was noted, this one is not an action item, but we can touch base before next month's meeting and see where the bills are at in the process. And I know that they both have a great deal of support, so they're going to make it. And but we can look at the issue of whether or not we want to bring those back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to item 5, fair market value guidance and methodologies for properties negatively impacted by special circumstances. This will be presented by Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the May 29th, 2024 board meeting, Member Schaefer presented item 20, property valuation or special exemption, proposing discussion and possible support for a constitutional amendment and or legislation that would provide property tax relief when a sexually violent predator SVP is released into a specified area and surrounding properties subsequently experience a respective decline in value. I appreciate Member Schaefer's efforts to bring this issue into the light as he, as he cited SVPs released into a community being a major factor in decline of value factor to homeowners. I, for one, have similar concerns affecting homeowners and the resulting decline in value of their property in my district, such as neighborhoods that have meth or drug houses, a community taken over by rampant gang activity, violent crime, or theft, a home next to illegal dog breeding or kennel activities, or a community experiencing high commuter traffic because the Waze traffic app deters traffic through communities in a regular basis. But before supporting legislation or other property tax relief on this matter, I would like to propose that if we can get our executive director possibly and staff to do a little bit of research and come back to us, possibly maybe even call for a hearing. I don't know if Madam Chair if it's appropriate, that would come back to us. I don't know how our schedule or our agenda looks like for July or August, and see if it's warrant, what kind of action, or if in fact it is really a real big issue throughout the state. It may be just happening in certain counties. So I'm kind of throwing it out there, and I see our executive director coming up, so let me hear from her.
Thank you, Ms. Stowers.
Good morning, Yvette Stowers, Executive Director. Regarding the issue, we are prepared to provide an overview on how the property is valued current law, and we can do that at the July meeting. I do not believe we're at the stage where we need to have a special hearing or informational hearing for this matter. The assessors are aware of how to value property, and they have not expressed any concerns or identified any problems with valuing property that has been negatively impacted for various reasons. But we're more than willing to provide a primer to this body on how the valuation takes place.
I would appreciate that, unless members have other, and I'm open, I don't know how if others have heard about this or if it's coming to your attention in your respective districts, but.
I think that would be helpful if we can get that. And I know that Ms. Lee, the head of the Assessors Association, is to be here later today, possibly.
I'm sorry, there's been a change in schedule.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, and maybe we could get some comments from them, because it seems like there are hazards that could affect a property negatively, being proximate to a slide area or being in a wildfire area. And I'd like to kind of talk with them about how would you work with something that is more changeable in nature. So if an individual who's been adjudicated to be identified as a sexually violent predator, if they're renting versus if they're owning in the area. And I know that they have, since this item has come up, I've had the opportunity to read a lot more about individuals who are adjudicated to be termed sexually violent predators. And so there may be some differences in how they're handled, how long they're in the community, do they go to the state hospital, all those kinds of things. But I do know from the experience of having one person like that in my home county that they are very tightly monitored, and they do end up going back to prison or the state hospital in a pretty timely fashion. But I don't know about the situation with dog breeding outdoors. It could be cockfighting. It could literally be anything. Or just very rundown properties. There's always the situation with properties that are under code enforcement or become condemned, and it's very multifactorial. But Mr. Young, what would you like to say?
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the board again. Once again, David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So in very big, broad strokes, there's basically two methods in which currently under property tax law, you can provide relief for taxpayers, property owners, and whatnot that have experienced a decline in their value. The very first way is, you've already mentioned, is the Prop 8. It's already in statute. We have rules, we have guidance, we actually have, it's been established very soon after Prop 13 was made law of the land. So the assessors have a good understanding and in practice is already implementing Prop 8s. So in that case where something happens, a predator moves into your neighborhood and there is a decline in value, the assessors is already charged with, on an annual basis during lien date, they look at the neighborhoods and see if there's a decline. And if there is a decline, they would give you a temporary reduction in your taxable value. So as an example, there are some limitations to that. You and I, hypothetically, we live on the same block. You've been in your house for about 30 years. I just moved in. I paid $800,000 for my house last year. So I'm taxed at $800,000. You've been there for a little bit longer. You live there. Your taxable value is $250,000. A predator moves into the neighborhood, and it's demonstrated by sales. Now houses just like ours are selling for $700,000. The assessor will come in, take a look at that, and say, hey, values have declined. On one hand, I'm taxed at $800,000. I would get $100,000 temporary reduction in my value for tax purposes. But because we're under Prop 13, your house is only taxed at $250,000. You may not get that same benefit because we're taxed at different. It's a comparison between factor-based value and the fair market value. So there is already provisions for that in law. It's understood. There's a lot of guidance out there, but it doesn't affect us equally. The other model they have for a reduction for something bad that happens to you is under basically disaster relief. There's a body of law there also, and that addresses directly your concern about a fire happens, you get flooded and whatnot. In that case, what the assessor does is that they take a look at the difference between the fair market value before and after the disaster happens. And let's say there's a 20% reduction in value. They would actually go in and give you a 20% reduction in your taxable value. So in the same scenario, $250,000 for you and $800,000 for me, I would get 20% of $800,000, $160,000 reduced for my taxable value that year. You at $250,000, we suffered the same type of damage. You would get $50,000 reduced 20%. So it gives you a proportional reduction. The only thing for that is, while the Prop 8 is already in law and applies to this type of a predator moving next door, the disaster relief does not contemplate that. Disaster relief, it's required that you have physical damage and that you actually fit under a definition of a disaster. So while there are two models, one is already in law and enforceable. The other one, we would need something else to make it possible.
And I know that Mr. Vasquez has a question, but if I might continue just
Of course.
for one question, is so under Prop 8, there is a role for the property owner
Yes.
to say yes or no whether they want their property to be downvalued. If I'm contemplating a scenario where someone's in the middle of a sale, and maybe they do need to disclose that, but if they want to sell their home for what the market will bear, and so if they don't wish to have their property devalued, then can they use that service?
They can most certainly ask the assessor, but the assessor is bound by statute to figure out what its fair market value is as of lien date. So if they find that it is lowered, it'd be hard pressed for the assessor not to give a Prop 8 reduction. I mean, that will be at the discretion of the assessor, but the statute is pretty.
And one more, if I might ask. So it seems like the action cycle for the people who have been adjudicated to not just be an ex-offender, but they're deemed a sexually violent predator. And it seems like they spend a short amount of time in a community. So
Right.
how, like, would the assessor find out there's an SVP and now I downvalue the property, that SVP is left, I restore the value of the property to where it was without him, but now a month later somebody else comes?
That's a great point. The administration, if this were the case, the administration of it would require some real work. You're absolutely right. The discovery process is going to be an issue. And are you with Prop 8 right now, you only have the option of doing it on lien date. So it's every January 1 of each year. So if something happens and it comes in, the relief is not immediate. You have to wait till next lien date, and you only get to restore it upon the next lien date. So you give it in 1 year increments. And it's an excellent, it actually unfolds many things. If you have one move in, do you get it? Do you have two? Do you get it twice? If you have three, is it multiple times? So there are many things to be asked and answered.
Okay. Mr. Vasquez, did you have a question?
You've answered a couple of them, but you actually raised one, and I was, because I was referring to, incidents like I listed here, but the issue that's now is happening, with all the floods and rains, and like I'm thinking of in my district, we had a hillside in Palos Verdes that just slipped out. So at some point, folks who were paying property, how do you value something that's no longer there? It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. It is an issue. And there's
when you were mentioning, though, the LTA that exists now, does that cover something like that, or does that fall into the whole disaster issue that you're talking about?
Yeah, it falls under disaster. The point is, if the property no longer exists, how do you assess it? The whole thing slipped into the ocean or something.
Or off the hill, right?
Yeah, off the hill. It will be a challenge to figure out how do you one, does the legal exist anymore? And if it doesn't, then I guess the assessment is zero. Even if it did exist, what is the value of something that is basically been washed away? So.
Right.
Prop 19 would help in some of these cases.
Prop 19.
Disaster relief.
Yeah, disaster relief. Prop 19.
Base your value.
One of the pluses in Prop 19 is that it did open up the whole state to these transfers.
Yeah.
So you could.
Is it beyond wildfire? Would it include?
Yeah, it includes wildfires. Mudslides.
Okay.
Yep. So it does include all that.
Okay.
Mr. Amron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Member Schaefer and Member Vasquez for their leadership on what is a very unique issue. And I think there are some concerns among the general public on property valuations, especially under some unique circumstances. Just to understand the process here, Mr. Vasquez, you wanted to have an informational hearing, or you wanted the executive director to present in July, August, and if there's enough information, we would have an informational hearing with like criminal justice advocates, maybe Safe Street advocates at a later date? Is that what we're kind of doing a fact finding now, and then kind of broadening our community input?
I think that would be appropriate, because it sounds like, in listening to our executive director, she really hasn't heard from assessors. But I'm thinking if we cast the net out there, we might hear from folks that are experiencing these. Especially, I'm thinking, like I have this one area, I'm telling you, in PV, Palos Verdes, that there's several properties that are literally slipping. And some are still somewhat habitable, but some are like yellow tagged, so they have to do some repairs before they can even live in them. And I just don't know if it's an issue up and down the state or just in certain areas. But after, maybe some of this fact-finding, we may feel like it constitutes a hearing, a full-blown hearing of some sort.
Understood.
That's all.
Well,
I just didn't
that's-
know if we needed to jump out ahead of it, though.
Yeah, I think it would definitely behoove us to get a little more information back in the July-August timeframe. And we could get the input of assessors to say on the situations that are a little more transient. A landslide is kind of obvious usually, but there's different, different categories that folks fit within, and get a little more input from the assessors of how would you be able to cope with this. And then I think, too, it's a little bit scary that property owners would only be able to change that on their lien date, because say that they want to sell the property, the nuisance is now gone, but buyers can only get financing based on what the property value was with the nuisance. And now their pool of buyers is lessened, and so there could be a situation where an individual's property is devalued for a reason that was beyond their control, clearly, and then it has a negative economic impact on them that they only have the ability to change that once a year. So I think it's a little bit of a nuanced situation that we should get more input on. Okay. Mr. Gaines.
Just to add on to that, in the event of the sale of a home in a community, I'm thinking of like Megan's Law, that discloses, right? That provides that disclosure of a convicted sex offender for public information. So I know that my kids, in looking to buy a home, they're checking to see if there's offenders in the neighborhood or not, and so it's helping make a decision, right? You can still move into the neighborhood, but if you have that exposure, I think it would also be reflected in pricing, right? Because if there's enough buyers out there saying they don't want to live there, or maybe they do because they can get it for a lower price, but there's clearly a difference in the valuation as a result. And so then the question would be, if the house is selling for less as a result of the exposure, whatever that might be, then that would be reflected upon sale, right? So it's sold for a lower price than what it should have in the marketplace. So it would take care of itself through the course of a sale, but I guess the question you're asking is, what if I'm living there and I'm paying taxes every year and the new lower value is not being reflected through the assessors? Am I summarizing that correctly?
Yeah, I'm thinking if the property owner can only change the situation on the lien date, then the sexually violent predator who has been returned to that community
Yes.
because they were convicted in that county, and that person, because they're monitored, they have dictated routes to work and routes to the store, and et cetera, and they stray off that route and their ankle bracelet tells the tale, well, they could be gone within a week.
Yeah.
And so then, does the property owner have to live with that devaluation for a year? And so
Good point. Yeah.
they didn't really cause the situation that has now impacted them, and it could be just sort of a morass right there.
Right.
But Mr. Emron, did you have a comment?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I also like the fact that it's under special circumstances as well. So let's just say there's a known area for pedestrian fatalities, for speeding, if there's a homicide on the street, if there's a mass shooting, I think all these things should be taken into account as well as we do our fact-finding. Thank you.
Mr. Schaefer.
If we have any hearings on this with the assessors or any of the legislative committees, I'd like to be invited to attend. It's a very interesting topic. We can go even beyond general crimes. There is a law in California that if 3 people die, or if in a 3-year period, if you have any deaths, you have to disclose that when the real estate is sold. So you go back 3 years and you could have had grandparents pass. I mean, this is a natural part of our community, but if you don't disclose that, then the people can come back and say, got to knock $10,000 off the price because even though there's no publicity. Now, a lot of these times there is great publicity, like for the sexual violent predators, there's great stories in San Diego media about Judge David Gill sending them out to Alcumba Springs. David Gill and I went to law school together. We're old friends, and that's his little specialty as a senior member of the bench. He gets those cases, and they do happen every year, it seems. My friend Jeff Prang had a weird opportunity decades ago when Charlie Manson and the Tate Bianca murders of 7 people brutally. What do you think that did to the property value of that home, I think the home was torn apart, and decimated. The same down in San Diego where our friend Ernie Dronenberg, I think I'm going to talk to him about this. He had the Heaven's Gate where 39 people in Rancho Santa Fe decided they were going to go to heaven by committing suicide. And the sheriff's got a call one day saying, I just saw a video that I used to belong to the cult, and in the video it said, by the time you see the video, we'll all be dead. And he called the sheriff and said, I want to show you this video, and they drove out there, and every newscaster from Japan to Germany had already shown up with their cameras. So, a lot of these things get such notoriety that you couldn't give away the home. Well, you could give it away, but we're in the business of fair market value, and we have to be aware of these things, and we're representing the taxpayers. And whenever we have a reason to give the taxpayer a little less valuation, a little less tax bill, it's our duty to do it. Thank you.
Well, to be continued. We'll get some more information. Ms. Towers.
I just want to be clear that I understand what you guys are asking for and what we can provide. Either July or August, we can come back with a full presentation on the existing law as it relates to Prop 8 and the mechanics of Prop 8. And we can provide a full presentation on existing law as it relates to disaster relief.
Yes.
And in addition to that, I will reach out to California Assessors Association to see if they are having a need for additional guidance, and invite the president of the association to speak at the July or August meeting on this topic.
Great, thank you. And I think it may be that that Prop 8 already has it covered in that sense, and that there may not be statutory support for us going beyond what has already been approved by the voters and by the legislature. So this may be a good one for the legislature. They're going to be beginning a 2-year session. That's a fresh new session to really work on the ideas. And I think the Public Safety Committee members and the Rev and Tax Committee members. But really, if we need to expand things, we'll find out when we have our meeting on it, and then it would be the purview of the legislature to really have those discussions and open it up, for a lot of public discussion. So, okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And we're just about 7 minutes past taking our morning break to give give staff and captioners a little bit of a break here. So we're going to take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:18, please. Thank you. We're back from our break now, and we're ready to go on to item 6, which is the proposed informational hearing on property tax implications for California-based regional clean hydrogen hubs, the H2 hubs development, and this is presented by Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I wanted to share. I had the opportunity last month to speak to a group, actually out here in Sacramento, on this issue, and in making the presentation and interacting with these folks, I know California has always been kind of at the forefront in terms of the whole sustainability issue and looking at alternative fuels. And I would just, I'm putting out a request here of the board if it was possible to schedule or host an informational hearing on this somewhere down the road on clean hydrogen programs, possibly, you know, maybe closer to the end of the year. I'm thinking, and I'll leave that up to staff to see where it possibly could fit in. I was kind of shooting for like an October meeting of some sort down there with the stakeholders, because in the discussion when I was making this presentation, it looks like it could potentially have a lot of ramifications on property tax and the assessed values of property. So I just wanted to get that out there and see what, one, if we get all the stakeholders out, maybe we can at least stay out in front of this before it comes to us at a head and where it could be an issue that we may not be prepared for. So I was looking at, and I know in the government, I think it was back in October of 23, Governor Newsom announced the U.S. Department of Energy awarded a California $1.2 billion to accelerate the development of deployment and clean renewable hydrogen energy and what they call H2H hubs statewide. An additional $11 billion will fund 39 projects by state and private industry partners for hydrogen energy pipelines, hydrogen-powered trucks and buses, fueling stations, and liquefaction facilities. The H2 hubs are concentrated in urban regions in the state, specifically Los Angeles, Oakland, Sacramento, and San Diego. And in Los Angeles has already been selected. This is truly an emerging industry in public utility arena, and it presents for the BoE and assessors with the opportunity to help meet the property tax challenges and questions that will need to be addressed. An informational hearing, I believe, would be necessary to start and enable us to directly engage with the brand new set of stakeholders, experts, and interested parties who will be depending on our guidance and assistance. The BoE has a clear nexus with the emerging hydrogen industry in California. As our primary constitutional function, the BoE assesses public utilities and other specified properties such as the pipelines, fumes, canals, ditches, and aqueducts, as well as property owned or used by regulatory railway, telegraph, or telephone companies, railroad car companies, and companies transmitting or selling gas or electricity. Additionally, the BoE oversees the assessment practices for the 58 county assessors who are charged with valuing over $13 billion assessment each year. Most likely both state and local assessment authorities and functions and BoE guidance will be involved in the development and built out of the H2 hubs, pipelines, and other facilities. An information, input, discussion, and even planning at an early stage with the state and federal agencies, energy industry experts, and local jurisdictions, representatives involved in H2 hubs development is important so unnecessary hurdles are avoided and proper information is disseminated to all the stakeholders and the public. Two major developments have been moving forward despite current constraints. The first one is the governor directed his Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz, to establish a California Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems, also known as ARCHES. ARCHES is a nonprofit public-private partnership designed to negotiate for up to $1.2 billion from the U.S. Department of Energy to implement clean hydrogen hubs to accelerate the production of clean hydrogen technology. ARCHES' first task is to lead California's efforts to secure and oversee the federal funding and work with all stakeholders, including state agencies like the BoE. I just spoke at the ARCHES symposium earlier this month. And then second, in September of 2022, the governor signed AB 209, the Energy Climate Change Budget Bill that established the Clean Hydrogen Program under California Energy Commission, authorizing them to solicit demonstrations or scale up hydrogen projects that produce, process, deliver, store, or use hydrogen derived from water using eligible renewable energy resources. Centralized large scale of hydrogen production project solicitations and hydrogen storage project solicitations were issued, but they were recently put on pause due to the current budget. I propose that we take advantage of this temporary lull by hosting an informational hearing in October and invite representatives from GoBiz, ARCHES, California Energy Commission, and experts from the industry and other interested parties to discuss the 8 issues suggested in my memo, focusing on but not limited to determining 1, property tax impacts for H2 hubs, 2, whether further rulemaking is needed for H2 hubs and other emerging renewable fuel and green industries, 3, which emerging renewable fuel green industries under current law should either be state or locally assessed, 4, staff capacity and additional training if needed, additional workload issues this industry may bring forward, and 6, any problematic issues regarding the assessment of this industry, federal, state exemptions or obsolescence, etc. And number 7, estimate revenue and agency costs associated with H2 hubs or related industries. And 8, an educational outreach and marketing campaigns for regional and local governments, county assessors, as well as various stakeholders. And any other comments or concerns you may wish to add to this. My hope is that this informational hearing will provide us with a better understanding of the hydrogen hubs and hydrogen technology, laws and regulations, as well as property tax guidance, rules, and novel impacts applicable to hydrogen hubs and related industries. I would like to move a motion in this direction, but let me first open it up to my colleagues and get some feedback and suggestions or any comments you may have. And I see hands up already.
Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, thank you. As enthusiastic as I am over item 5 that Mr. Member Vac has brought to us, I am not enthusiastic about number 6. First of all, I think we should have an informal agreement that members shall only put in 1 item on a given calendar instead of 2 or 3. And I also don't see that there's really jurisdiction for us to get involved in the issue here of the $1.2 billion awarded to California and the whole issue. I think that's being handled elsewhere, and if our assessors have any concern for it, they'll let us know. I know we had an informational hearing on the homeless. We spent $8,500 having a forum where we had the assemblyman come speak and a homeless representative come talk to us. We had our staff there to assist, but sadly nobody came from the public. I didn't see one person from the public that was there to listen to us, even though we were trying to get them. We didn't have one media person come, even though we had Mr. Kim down in Santa Monica to talk to the media if they showed up. I think we got enough pressing problems without getting into number 6. And I so commend Mr. Vasquez for number 5, which I think is an issue that has a lot of going forward. And I don't see the same for number 6. I would think that we should concentrate all our efforts on doing a good job with number 5 and pass on number 6. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you. Just appreciate Member Vasquez for bringing this forward. I like the idea. I think it's important that we're looking forward, looking ahead at the opportunities as they arise, and this is clearly an opportunity for additional infrastructure right here in the state of California. There's a nexus here. I mean, we're talking about infrastructure being built for which we're going to have to figure out the valuation of that property, whether it's done through our county assessors or whether it's done through the state and determining the value of that property. But I think it would be very beneficial for us also to understand what the proposal is and how it's going to be implemented. Philosophically, I like the idea of having more than one option when it comes to energy opportunities here in the state. When I was in the legislature, and Sally, I don't know if you had this opportunity also, but I had a chance to drive a hydrogen functioning BMW. That was like 10 years ago, maybe 15. And was impressed with that technology, which I'm sure has improved quite a bit since then. So I see a lot of value in this and would be in support of it with no disrespect to my colleague from San Diego. Thank you.
Mr. Emron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank all my colleagues here for the comments today on this specific item. We are moving into more of a green economy here. We've set standards and certain benchmarks in California on that transition to clean and green energy. So I do appreciate Member Vasquez here. This is very innovative and in its own right, and I think the board owes it to the constituents or taxpayers to look into this matter. It looks like it's an informational fact-finding matter too. To get more information, to talk with GoBiz, to talk with our energy departments and see how we can be helpful and resourceful here in bringing hydrogen hubs to California. So I do think there is a nexus here, and I appreciate the insight today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm wondering if we could get some input on timing from our executive director, Ms. Dowers. It sounds like Mr. Vasquez is thinking before the end of the year.
If possible, yeah.
Yvette Stowers, Executive Director, informational hearing for the end of the year. This is just this July, basically. I would really have to take a closer look at the calendar. I know I have requests pending right now for an informational hearing on follow-up on the insurance matter. And we're trying to clear the calendar. Informational hearing as a follow-up on the insurance crisis as it relates to property tax valuation. I've just received that request and it's pending approval. I'm also thinking that we do have our annual meeting with the assessors in September. So September would not be a good date. Possible October 23rd, possible. But as an informational hearing and the various invited speakers, of course, we'll be looking to Member Vasquez to take the leadership on that. And of course, I can have the Property Tax Department, Mr. Young, provide an overview next as the systems may relate to property tax and our property tax rules. You do raise some points there about, and we don't know, is it going to be locally assessed, is it going to be state assessed?
I see Mr. Young approaching.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, honorable members of the board. Our executive director is correct. My look at emergent issues like this, I follow a very systematic way of looking at it. There's a couple of questions I ask right away. So if there is an informational meeting, these are the top things on my priority list. First one is taxability. Second one is jurisdiction. And then the last one is assessment. So taxability is, the question is who's going to own it? Is it going to be owned by a governmental agency? Is it going to be owned by a private individual, private company? One is taxable. The government is probably not taxable. The private is taxable. And then if it is a government-owned, we have the whole issue again of, is there a PI, a JPA type situation? So that's the first thing I would ask. The second thing I would look at is jurisdiction. If it is taxable, who has jurisdiction on it? Will it be locally assessed by the assessor, or will it be centrally assessed by us? We actually do assess property. As you well know, you adopted the value last month of the state assessees. Will it be a state assessee? And then the third thing I would tackle then is the actual assessment thereof. And the assessment actually has 4 sub-steps. The first one is discovery, the second one is inventory, third one is valuation, and the last one is enrollment. So each one of those would have to be asked. Discovery, how do we know when something is built? Inventory, how do we find out what's actually there on the ground? And then the valuation, you've already, Mr. Gaines, Board Member Gaines has already mentioned, how do we value it? Is there a methodology that's preferred over another? And then the very last one is enrollment. Once you came up with a value, the question in the back of my head is, because this is green energy, will they be seeking an exclusion or an exemption or some kind of preferential tax treatment for it? If they are, how does that affect the enrollment? It may be assessed at $500 million, but is there an exclusion, just like for solar, a new construction exclusion? Will part of it not be taxable? So all those are swirling around. If we have an informational meeting, those are the items I will be looking at in trying to figure out how and what, if it becomes a thing, how does the property tax department administers that function?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Emron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also be very interested in which parcels of land are best equipped to take on a hydrogen hub center, and I think that would be good information to have as our fact-finding process begins.
And it's interesting you bring that up, because at this presentation I was giving, there was people from all the energy. You had Sempra, you had the oil folks like Chevron, you had the big boys in all the energy, because they're seeing this, because the money's there. It's coming already from the feds, and it's here in California, so they're all trying to get out in front of it themselves. So my guess is a lot of them are looking to convert their properties now into this clean energy. And so I think what Mr. Young is mentioning is right on point. As we do this hearing, hopefully we can get out in front of this a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And I think something that I'm thinking about is, since it was just announced, it's really in formation right now.
Right.
If the board is interested in moving ahead, it sounds like a majority of us are, then if we could potentially shoot for the November or December timeframe, and I see a reaction.
I think October seems to be better for her.
From December, we generally have appeals.
Okay. So is November possible time? Or to be decided?
To be decided. Let's focus on only one informational hearing in November.
November.
So I guess, and I haven't even asked, the board has not been asked to take action on the informational hearing for insurance, and cannot take action on it because it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
But the board can take action on having an informational hearing in November for the carbon hydrant, because it is on the agenda, if the other member would be open to deferring his request to a later meeting date.
Okay.
I'm flexible, but I would like to get it done this year, and I would like to do it, I'd like to be there to have a span of time, right? Because we had our initial hearing in February, but some things have already changed, like discussion with the governor's engagement with a trailer bill providing more succinct review of filings at the Department of Insurance and making sure they're getting done within a 60-day time frame. So maybe if we did something in the fall.
Excuse me, I see our council approaching because that item is not on our agenda.
It's not.
But this is informative. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we bring back both of the proposals at our July meeting. And Mr. Vasquez, well, I can't ask that question. But Mr. Vasquez, are you looking for a hearing that would be in Sacramento or elsewhere?
I'm open, whatever is, more convenient. I don't mind it here, and it sounds like it'd probably be easier logistically, and, so I'll leave that up to staff to come back with what they suggest.
Okay.
And in terms of, I think somebody mentioned in terms of speakers, we got a whole slew, our office has a whole slew, and I'm open to any others that maybe you in your respective districts may have also. I mean, there's people on this cutting edge right now on this issue, and several that have received funding from the feds. And I think it'd be good to have all the stakeholders here and see what we can do to hopefully have it as informative as possible.
Yes, okay.
Sal,
So, did you have another comment, Mr.
well,
Schaefer?
I was going to say, I believe I can get us as a city council or board of supervisors chambers if you want to have a meeting in San Diego. And I include free zoo passes for everybody.
Gosh, I'm going to get to that zoo one of these days. I really am.
Madam Chair, I
yes,
think
please.
meeting in Sacramento would be best, especially considering that some of your stakeholders are going to be Environment Protection Agency, and they're here in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so we don't actually need a motion on this. So I think we are definitely interested, and we'd like to have both of the proposals come back. And it's not that we'll do one or the other, but we'll examine both of those and set a date for them. And it sounds like the one that's proposed today under item 6 would be in Sacramento. And so I think that's a good amount of direction to kind of go with right now, but that
If you're
sounds-
comfortable with that. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. I would work with the team and look at the calendar and see the best month to do informational hearings, both of the
Okay.
topics, and I'll be prepared to report back to the board at the July meeting.
Okay,
And my
fantastic.
staff's
I will
willing
work
to
with your
assist
staff.
in
I'll
whatever,
work one-on-one with your staff as well.
yeah,
both
whatever you
offices.
need on that, yeah.
That's great, very helpful. Okay, well, we're going to take public comment on this. And we don't have written comments nor any speaker cards from the auditorium. So we'll go out to our AT&T moderator to see if there's anyone on the line who's hoping to comment on Mr. Vasquez's item 6.
If anyone on the phones would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0. And there's no one queuing up at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we've got direction to staff, and we've got Mr. Vasquez's staff ready to assist as well. So that's very, very helpful. So we will keep on going now to item 7, the executive director's report, and get Ms. Stowers back up. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good morning. I lose track. Yvette Stowers, Executive Director. Members, for today's report, I will provide a brief update on the state fiscal year 2024-25 budget, an update on an upcoming event, and remind our stakeholders and the public about our new location for future board meetings. Members, as you know, on June 13, the legislature passed AB 107, the Budget Act of 2024, and this act was presented to the governor on June 15th. The governor has until Thursday, June 27th, to sign the act. On Saturday, June 22nd, the governor and legislative leaders announced an agreement on the proposed 2024-2025 state budget plan. Budget Bill Juniors and budget trailer bills were introduced to enact their agreement. There were no material changes to the BoE. Of course, I will continue to keep you informed on any budget matters as it relates to the BoE. That is my report on the budget update. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Stowers on this item 7? Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick, Ms. Stowers, as you're talking about the budget, I'm just wondering, I know Mr. Nani's done a great job in filling a lot of the vacancies, but there's still a few, and I have one now personally in my office now. Is that something that we need to be careful, or how's that going to affect the budget? Are we able to hold that, or are they going to put a freeze on those?
We have not had a hiring freeze yet, but as usual, we do encourage you to fill your vacancies.
We're trying.
It's vital that they are filled. We have not had a conversation with the Department of Finance yet, but we will probably be having a conversation with them in the future. But we're working with, we're actively recruiting, filling our vacancies, and being very efficient with the dollars that we have.
So we don't have we haven't had a reading, or you don't get a feel from what the governor's proposing down the road, or what you think he might be proposing?
We got the same thing that one fill vacancies.
Yeah.
That, there was possible, we spoke last month, there was possible reduction, I think, Ms. Biati, 8% reduction across all state agencies. Okay. We're not seeing that now.
She's coming up.
She's coming up. Trying to see behind my head. You want to take this one over?
Sure. Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. We are cautiously optimistic that we will not have all of our vacancies swept. We've done a great job of keeping our vacancy levels very low. And we, the minute we find a vacancy, we try to fill it. We have a retirement, we try to turn around and fill that one as well. So we don't have a lot of vacancies, and as I said, cautiously optimistic that we'll get to keep them. As for the agency budget cuts, possible budget cuts, we're not sure how that'll affect us because we are, a constitutional agency, so we'll find out. We may be asked to volunteer a budget drill, but we have no information yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Towers on the budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to item 8.
Madam Chair, I have two more items under item 7.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, I broke it up. I thought it was a good time to take a break. Okay, the second item today, I want to inform the members about an upcoming event that BoE will be participating in. I have been asked to serve on a panel at a leadership academy hosted by UC Davis Graduate School of Management in partnership with the California Assessors Association, the County Recorders Association of California, and the California Association of Clerks and Elected Officials. The Leadership Academy will take place at UC Davis for 4 days in July 22nd to July 25th. BoE staff has in the past and will be participating this year in the Leadership Academy. The first academy took place in 2023, and Ms. Holly Cooper participated. For this upcoming academy, Mr. David Dotson will participate. Member, as part of our succession planning to meet our agency's strategic goal of developing the next generation of property tax leaders, we are thrilled to continue our involvement with this Leadership Academy. Any questions regarding the Leadership Academy?
Questions for Ms. Stowers? No, but thank you.
Okay, my final item is just a reminder that this is our last meeting here at 450 N Street. CDTFA is completing the process to entirely vacate this building and relocate to the newly constructed May Lee State Office Complex at 651 Bannon Street, Sacramento. The final closing of this location is expected by June 30th. The building will be closed for major rehabilitation, and no access to this auditorium will be available. After extensively searching for a new building, the new board member site, May Lee State Complex, was identified as the best choice. As such, we will begin to have our meetings there starting July 23rd, July 24th. Information will be on the BoE's website under the Board Meeting Information tab to keep the stakeholders informed about our new meeting location. Additionally, we have published a flyer announcing the move and are utilizing our social media accounts to ensure this information reaches all those who attend our meeting. Finally, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that BoE meetings have taken place in this boardroom since the 90s. A lot have taken place here. And over the past three decades, this location has served the board well. But we look forward to a new chapter at the May Lee State Office Complex starting next month. Members, that concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Members, Mr. Schaefer, did you have a comment or question?
How does the seating capacity there compare with here?
The capacity is probably 3 times the size.
Really?
Yes, it's a very nice building. And of course, we don't need 3 times the size, but we're going to be able to set it up where we're going to limit the seating to the center aisles, right? And so it'll be just fine.
Oh, I would like, if we have that capacity, that we have a notice go out to the educational institutions, junior colleges, that they might want to drop in and see what we're doing. In fact, if we wanted to offer coffee and donuts, I'd pay for it.
Oh, that's nice of you. Okay.
That's great. Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited about the move. You had shared with us some pictures of what the new facility looks like. So looking forward to that opportunity, and it's a fresh start.
Fresh start. It's a very nice facility. You guys are going to be really impressed.
And do we know what they're doing here? Are they?
They're going to rehab this building. They have not said if they're going to put another state agency here, but it's going to take some time to rehab.
Mm-hmm. Will it remain as office space?
The auditorium and the building itself.
You think it remains as office space, or would it have another use?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know there was some talk in the paper about trying to make it into some kind of apartments, affordable housing, but I don't think it's really feasible.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. I'm not a
But maybe the scaffolding comes down, huh?
Yeah.
Around the building?
Yeah. I mean, it's served us well. I mean, although I'm
Yes,
looking
it has.
forward to May Lee Complex, I do like this auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the convenience of it, and I would like for us to be able to stay here, but we can't.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future.
Yep. Time marches on.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's great that we'll still be in town here in Sacramento. So stakeholders will still be able to get to the May Lee office complex. And I've heard that there's very ample parking there for folks, which is going to be a little bit of a change for us. But as Ms. Dower said, a lot of life has been lived here. And I wish that we had Mr. John Thiela here today, because I believe that he and Ms. Scott were here the first day Yeah, so, and others for a very long time, so thank you.
Yeah, it's very, I know, I'm holding, I'm quite honest, I'm holding back tears right now. You know, I've been up there with you guys. I've been here testifying, I've been in the audience watching, and I've been in the back as a consultant with the case before the board, so it's.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It has some history, and it will be missed.
And Mr. Amron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Executive Director Stowers. First, I just want to thank you. It's been a tough budget year, and it looks like we're going to get through it. And I just want to appreciate you and Ms. Lisa Renati, too, for just wading the waters, those choppy waters for some time. But I'm looking forward to the next cycle that's coming up, and also the Mei Lee move as well. This board got to honor Mei Lee in 2019, I believe. So it's only right to carry on her legacy and us be the inaugural tenants of that building. She showed us what state service really is about. I mean, she served till about 102 years old. So it's going to be an incredible move, and it's going to be well worth it. So thank you.
And it may be the case that we're one of the first larger public meetings to occur there. So we're going to definitely get in on the ground floor and put our imprint on things. So thank you so much to staff, for everybody who's worked on going out and doing the search and negotiating with the governor's office and securing the facility. We really appreciate it. And there couldn't be a more appropriate place for the reasons that Mr. Amron said. So thank you. Any further questions on that one for Ms. Stowers? And if not, we will go on to item 8, which is also Ms. Stowers.
Okay, item 8, members, Revenue and Taxation Code 616 requires county assessors to annually complete their local assessment roll by July 1st. Section 155 provides that the board or its executive director may extend by 30 days the deadline for any official act by the assessor. And in the case of a public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also requires the executive director to inform the board of any such extension. This report is to inform you that Alpine, Colosa, Humboldt, Lassen, Placer, Shasta, and Tolar County assessors have requested and have been granted a 30-day extension for completing their 2024 local assessment roll. That completes my report.
Thank you. Any question on the extensions? Mr. Schaefer.
Yes. Are there any of these that are, like, we might call them frequent requesters, that year after year after year we have the same counties that need a delay, or is it generally different counties now and then depending on their particular needs?
It varies by county based on their workload and their situation. Most of the requesters, when they do make the request, they just went through a disaster probably, or their workforce capacity, and then some just ask just in case they fall behind.
Is there some philosophy behind requiring our board to get involved in being aware of this, or we're not being asked to approve it, we're just getting information? I would have full confidence in your office to do the matter without us knowing about it. Knowing if there's a problem, you'd bring it to our attention.
Thank you, sir. Well, a little history before, it did require board approval.
Oh.
And the board felt that they had faith in an executive office to do the approval, but just wanted to be informed when she grants the extension.
So we've downgraded it from approval to just being informed.
Yes.
Okay, and if we ever downgrade it further, I would support that.
Okay. But I enjoy keeping you guys informed.
Thank you. Anyone else on this one? Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that only 5 of the 6 counties are in my district, okay? So, and they don't seem to be the same counties from year to year. Sally and I have a lot of counties, but
Yeah.
it seems to, I've got 34 in my district, so it seems to vary a little bit as to what county is requesting the additional 30 days. So.
It does vary, and they take it serious. They just don't request it just because. They're looking at their workload and making a management decision. And I think last year I made a mistake and said, all the counties asked for it. And they quickly corrected me. Like, no, they don't. They just want a need to, only when they need to.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think that's all the questions on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go on now to item 9, which is the operational priorities by Ms. Renati.
Good morning, honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today I'll report on some of the agency's operational priorities. A fundamental goal of our 5-year strategic plan has been strengthening our workforce capacity. Since my last report, we have successfully filled 3 vacant positions. 2 are promotions and 1 is a person new to the agency. Our agency's remaining vacancies are currently in active recruitment, and hopefully we'll fill those as soon as possible. And our vacancy rate remains relatively low due to our supervisors and managers' hard work and commitment. We're also working closely with our managers and staff to ensure they have the necessary training and skills to take on more significant responsibilities within the agencies, as they are going to be the next generation of our property tax experts. Earlier today, Yvette Stowers, our executive director, talked to you about the budget. We are, as I said, cautiously optimistic with our budget, but at the same time right now we are working on our year-end activities for fiscal year 23-24. And we do that to make sure that we have the safeguard our essential funding for our agency. These activities include making sure we file all of our expense claims timely, we get our payroll done, we get all of our receipts for OE&E, everything that we have, we're trying to get that done. So we're trying to close our books. And lastly, we have expenditure reports that we get every month. I send them to your office. We also send them to all of our leaders of our units so that they can better track their expenditures, their projections, and make better decisions about managing the spending that they have. Members, this concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Renati? No? Okay. Seeing none, I think you got it all together there for us. So we're going to go on now to item 10, which is our TRA office report. And we will have Ms. Thompson come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and board members. I am Lisa Thompson, the Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office, and I'm here to update you on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office to keep you informed. First, I'm pleased to provide you with some statistics on the number of completed cases in May by the TRA office. And we completed 21 cases. 2 were in Vice Chair Gaines's district, District 1. 11 were in Chair Lieber's district, District 2. 5 were in Board Member Vasquez's district, District 3. And 3 were in Board Member Schaefer's district, District 4. 5 of the cases were in the administrative category and 16 were in the valuation category. The memo that is attached to the PAN provides you some details on the type of topics and within each of those categories. However, the largest area in the valuation category was exclusions from reassessment, with 8 completed cases. And of the 8 exclusion cases, 6 were from transfers between parents and children, and 2 were from cases for base or value transfers for seniors. I'd also like to inform the members of completed steps toward promoting the upcoming 2024 Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing that will be held August 27th, 2024 at that board meeting. We've updated our website to include additional information about the upcoming hearing. We've sent posters and flyers to county agencies that are involved with property taxes so they can display them in public areas of their offices. The offices were county assessors, tax collectors, auditors, and clerk of the boards. Board of Supervisors. And we have also issued a letter to assessors advising county assessors and interested parties about the hearing and the scheduled date. As further steps are made to publicize this very important hearing where taxpayers can come before this board, I will update you to keep you informed. Similar to past years, an outreach booklet or toolkit, will be provided to each of the board members sometime in late July, early August. And I appreciate the board's leadership, collaboration and support in the outreach efforts to let your constituents know about the opportunity for their voices to be heard at this year's Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing. This concludes my update. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Thompson? Mr. Schaefer.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Thompson. Nice to see you again. I noticed that there are 11 completed cases in the 2nd district and only 3 in my district. Is that because we have less problems, or maybe the good services of your office are a little better publicized in the 2nd district? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It just kind of depends on the cases that month. So the spread among the districts can vary by month. So This works out that way. Maybe next month yours will be higher.
Sure, well, I appreciate your good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think it's a fact that is acknowledged by nearly all that the 2nd district is the most unquiet district of the four board districts. Mr. Emron.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson and Madam Chair, too. Really looking forward to the TRA Bill of Rights hearing next month, too. And something we've done in the past is releasing a PSA video on top of the posters and anything. Is that something in the works?
Yeah, so we will repurpose some of the video that was used last year, actually, for the the service announcement. And so actually this morning before the board meeting at 9 I came in. So I did a voiceover and corrected the, so we have an updated date, and we changed a little bit of the verbiage. So yes, that's already been done. It's scheduled to be prepared sometime mid-July. So it'll be, I'm pretty sure it will be aired just before the next board meeting. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Mr. Vasquez.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. First of all, thank you for all your work, and looking forward to that, our hearing coming up in August. And it sounds like you're already, taking a proactive outreach on that, because I know in my district, I've had several good comments come back in terms of what you do with this. So we're looking forward to it coming up in August.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much, Ms. Thompson. Now, members, we have, we took our morning break a little bit late, so we're kind of pushing back lunch, and I think we will go on to item 11, the Property Tax Deputy Director's Report by Mr. Young, and then we'll do our lunch break afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lieber, honorable members of the board. For the record, I'm David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. So for your review today, I actually have 3 reports. There are our usual 3 for the Property Tax Department. The first 2 will be by Ms. Lauren Keach. There will be a report on letters to assessors issued and what's going on in the appraisal training and certification unit. That will be followed by Ms. Pamela DiNapoli, and she will give you an update as to what's going on in the State Assessed Properties Division. So if you're ready, I will have Ms. Keach start with the letters to assessors.
Please. Thank you, Ms. Keach.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Lieber and honorable board members. I'm Lauren Keach, Chief of the County Assessed Properties Division. Today, I will provide you with a brief report on letters to assessors. Attached to this month's agenda is a memo on letters to assessors, which provides a list of the LTAs that have been issued since our last board meeting. In addition, the memo provides a link to the BoE's website where a list of all the LTAs can be found that have been issued to date. As of the date of the attached memo, BoE staff has issued a total of 20 LTAs for calendar year 2024. Since our last board meeting, 5 of those LTAs had been issued, and those 5 LTAs are summarized as follows. The first is an LTA to issue the Trinity County Assessment Sampling Survey. The second is an LTA on the welfare exemption, affordable housing for community land trust, which explains the changes made by AB 1206. The third is an LTA on the welfare exemption, affordable housing, which explains the law changes made by AB 84. The fourth is an LTA to issue the guidelines for appraiser and assessment analyst certification and training, which was approved by this board at last month's meeting. And the fifth LTA is to announce the annual meeting of the State Board of Equalization and County Assessors. This concludes my report on letters to assessors. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions on the LTAs for Ms. Keach? Okay. Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I will go on then to my next report on the BOE's appraisal training and certification program. For the upcoming 2024-25 fiscal years, BOE staff has scheduled 31 classes and 2 workshops. Staff is also working to schedule additional classes using instructors from county assessors' offices. We also continue to offer our existing online basic training courses available through American River College and California State University, Sacramento, as well as our online courses and self-study training sessions available on the BOE's website. This concludes my report on training and certification. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Vasquez.
Yes, just a quick one. Thank you, Ms. Keats, for your presentation. Going back to the LTA, I guess it's 2024-019, where it lists various self-study and self-paced classes. Are we looking at ways we can expand or add additional classes on this?
The LTA for 19, is this the guidelines for appraiser certification? So this was our guidelines for appraiser and assessment analyst certification and training that was updated, and this was adopted by the board last month. Are you asking about self-study sessions that we offer alternatively?
Yes. It sounds like those are being pretty effective and moving forward. I was just wondering if we are seeing, or are we going to convert some of those so that you could have, I guess, self-study or what they call self-paced classes, kind of?
Yes, we are continuously looking at ways to modernize our self-studies, and self-paced courses is one of the options we're looking at. It's more of a down-the-road project. We are currently working to convert the existing self-studies to electronic format. You know, currently they have to fill it out and send it in, but we're trying to offer an online platform where they can go and complete the entire self-study in one course and it auto-scores. So it's beneficial on both ends that way. But these self-studies, they do count for the appraiser training hours, so they are frequently utilized, and just we encourage continuing education with these self-studies.
Sounds good. And while I have you up, I know you, I forgot, when you on your earlier presentation, I just wanted to go back if I could, regarding the LTA. I guess this was also the 2024-19, the appraisal certificate and training. Have we received much feedback from some of the smaller counties? For the matter, I'm thinking in conforming to the requirements in the training certified appraisers based on the LTAs, this previous one.
The assessor's offices were integral in this process as far as giving us feedback, and they did review the updated guidelines before we issued the final for adoption at last month's meeting. Does that answer your question?
So we were not getting any pushback from some of the smaller counties. I was just wondering.
No
not hearing anything?
pushback. It was a collaborative effort, and we also have meetings with the training coordinators where we discuss the updates to these guidelines. So there is a conversation involved there, and we incorporate their feedback in the process.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Keach? Well, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DiNapoli, can you update us on the State Assessed Properties Division?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lieber and honorable members. My name is Pamela DiNapoli, manager of the State Assessed Properties Division. Today I will provide a brief update on the status of our ongoing work in the division. Staff continue working to complete the private railroad car assessments for the current year. Private railroad car property statements were due April 30th, and staff have been working diligently to complete the appraisals. The final PRC values will appear as the private railroad car roll before the board at the July meeting. Staff have also completed the annual allocations of unitary values that the board adopted in May, and the allocation reports were mailed to each state assessee on June 15th as required by the Revenue and Taxation Code 746. Assessees now have a period of time to review the allocation reports and notify us of any errors or concerns prior to the July meeting when the board adopts the final board roll of state assessed property. Staff are also currently preparing the preliminary roll. Revenue and Taxation Code 755 requires us to transmit the preliminary roll to each county auditor by July 15th. The preliminary roll only provides an assessment total for each tax rate area and does not provide the additional detail that appears on the final roll transmitted after board adoption in July. We hope to have the preliminary roll mailed around June 30th this year, so a little sooner than it's required. That concludes my report on the status of our division's ongoing work for this month, and I am available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. DiNapoli?
Just one quick
Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you for your presentation, and I'm just wondering, did you see any evaluation that you need from your staff across that possibly could pose an issue during the appeal process coming up?
I don't from our end, but I think that's probably a better question for Mr. Young.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for the question. The answer is possibly. We've always have issues with assessment appeals. Some of them are reoccurring, so those reoccurring ones, I think they will actually be coming back around this year.
That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for your report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Okay, members, we are up to the time when I think it's probably best that we take our lunch break now, because we're kind of at the limit as far as our labor who are here.
Sure.
And yes, Mr. Schaefer.
You know, we used to have a 45-minute. We used to have 45-minute lunch. I'm trying to catch maybe a 3:30 plane today. I was wondering if we could do a 45-minute lunch, or if somebody wants to go for an hour. I know we've extended it to an hour.
Well, I think due to our labor agreements, we have to kind of stick to that.
Okay.
So unfortunately no, but I'll take that as a suggestion that we have to really put the pedal to the metal in this afternoon and get through our business in a really quick way. So we are going to go on to our lunch now, and it's 12:20, and we will reconvene at 1:20. Thank you.